summer. It's Tuesday. Just got done having lunch with Phil. It's time for another exciting adventure. King of pressure mole, I'm going to have an accident. I don't know what this truck is doing. He's scraping the pole from the height limit. He's got a nice couple of scratches on his roof. Don't go downstairs. Where were we last time? Dimensionality of space, singularities, event horizons. Everything has an event horizon. Nothing has an event horizon. Because everything is everywhere. Everything is everywhere. Hawking radiation. Where is Hawking radiation emitted? My postulate is that due to the multidimensional nature of space and the fact that all physical objects constructed of the network of nodes and edges, vertices and edges, is connected at these multiple dimensionalities, that when you get to the densities of a black hole and you have the event horizon, which light itself can't escape, there's only one way left for the evaporation, the radiation of the black hole to go, and that is through a higher order dimensionality to some other part of the universe. And if you think of the connectedness of the interior of the black hole, that's a singularity. Because of mass being defined by some mathematical singularity in 3 space, the reality in higher dimensions has volume that is complex, and it protrudes throughout the entirety of the universe, essentially. So, in 3 space perspective, it looks like a singularity point. In reality, it bulges into the rest of the universe as little spiky things. And, in fact, behavior as the black hole itself evaporates, and even as it accretes new matter into itself, causes perturbations through these extra dimensions throughout the universe, representing one of the sources of quantum fun, one of the energy sources of quantum fun. Meaning that depending on the density of the space, and so the quantum foam can manifest itself within another particle. So there could be a proton on the other side of the universe with this local black hole having radiation into it, perturbing it slightly, which could be a source of proton decay or even nuclear decay. more susceptible to the perturbation of their structure by Hawking radiation transmitted through higher order dimensions. But the tendency in anything that's massive, where it is connected to some part of the interior of the black hole, again, no dimensionality in R3 space, but at the dodic dimensionality framework, the black hole exists everywhere in the universe, essentially, on a vigorous and transient. So it doesn't. That's the other thing. It isn't like it's locked into a specific place within the rest of the universe. It's sort of bubbling in and out all over the place in accordance with its total mass. Is how frequently it bubbles out, or how many bubbles or spouts, leaks, white holes. They're essentially white holes, but white holes are only produced at the microscopic level. I would discount the concept of a white hole of any significance in this. They are solely things that happen at the level of the quantum field. We're talking order of magnitude greater than Planck length at maximum. But there would be areas within the universe that are more prone to connect and be influenced by the effects of the Hawking radiation. And those would be places within the universe that have the least amount of matter. Meaning that essentially the fabric of space itself, because it has so little matter in it, so little space, so little numbers of nodes and edges at that density, is that the Hawking radiation is then able to not just perturb the space in terms of quantum field, but it would actually be able to eject matter and energy on a one-way trip through the white hole. Thus populating what would be completely, largely, or very empty space with matter, which could then itself accrue into more massive objects. And this is where you can source basically protons and electrons popping into existence in vacuum, pure vacuum, low gravitational density, such that the matter gathered by any black hole is recycled into the emptiest regions of the universe through these higher order dimensions. Now, if you're going to have this white hole quantum foam in this area that is high density of matter per volume units, unit 3D unit space, it's going to be less likely that this quantum foam will manifest particles, because the density of the space itself is already stable and it can't push through. So it'll push energy through, but then it'll come right back. And that's what we can call the spontaneous creation and annihilation of particle and antiparticle pairs. Right? Now, why wouldn't antimatter, and I don't even like the term antimatter because to me it implies anti-mass. It's not anti-mass, it's just different charge, which cause matter, classic matter, antimatter, just causes the particles to unfold, decay. They annihilate, they don't annihilate. They just unfold each other. They link together. Why is there a bias in the universe toward excited to be, because the entirety of the universe has a twist, or I want to call it a vortex, but it's more like gears. It's clockwork gears. You can only be clockwise or counterclockwise, unless you're going to oscillate. I never thought of that. It's possible on long enough time scales that the chirality of the universe could oscillate. Wow. And then there'd be a bias towards antimatter, which would cause a lot of interesting effects everywhere, because you basically have everything blowing up almost all at once without being a singularity. And the amount of background radiation that you would end up with is enormous. And this resolves, if you want to call that the Big Bang. Wow, I've never had this thought before. It sort of absorbs the concept of the Big Bang into a perpetual universe, in that the chirality reverses. And essentially causes everything to rebuild itself all at once. The universe gets formatted like a hard drive. But there's still a distribution of mass throughout the universe that's left over from the prior universe, which in turn is going to cause this. So, if you're going to go for a completely regenerated universe, I don't believe in the Big Bang. It's this singularity blowing out everything as an explanation for the background radiation. I think that before I had this prior thought of the chirality of the universe and dotted reversing, causing a bias towards antimatter matter. I like it because it's an oscillation. That's why I like it. It means that each gets to turn. Not that there's bias at any given moment. The universe doesn't care. It's always matter, but it's from the sense of the old matter, previous matter, the charge, this clock's running the opposite direction, so it unwinds all the prior matter. And the universe as a whole has momentum towards an antimatter direction or matter direction. But prior to having this epiphany, background microwave radiation, to me, is an artifact of the eternal nature of the universe itself, and the fact that with the quantum field, there's going to be a tendency to alter and diffract light that is traveling throughout the universe. Diffraction due to quantum fog. It both shifts the wavelength and causes it to be scattered. And the map that we're seeing of the sources of the infrared is a map of pockets where the diffraction So it's more like static in a way, and we're getting a snapshot of it. It's slow motion because of the scale so high. But even if you look at an old-fashioned television where you're looking at the static on it, you can see, or your mind can imagine that there's patterns to it. It's not a homogeneous smooth gradient of, or not even gradient, just a smooth color of, what do they call it, Moiré pattern, or printing format for newspapers where they use dots. Anyway, it's not smooth, right? It's just because the universe isn't smooth. So, and to try and say that measuring the background radiation to infer a structure behind it is going to be difficult because of the fact that there's a diffraction. It's like taking the light reflecting off a painted wall and deducing the dimensions of the room. You can do it, but you can't give me a picture of the room. You can give me a volumetric approximation of what it should be, but it's not like mirrors, right, where you'll be getting an image of the room and its contents. Now you're getting patches of color, patches of energy that are really just, I guess, derivatives of a reflection, as represented in the diffusion of these energy sources and the shifting of them to the red because of the quantum phone, because of the density fluctuations or variations, fluctuations. Yeah, they fluctuate very slowly. So that's my more classic view of the background radiation, why it's there, and the fact that the universe is so old, or so old isn't a term, but the radiation's been generated it's endlessly being generated. The process of the universe itself is one of energy, transformation, and change, right? Chemistry, the science of change, ultimately. So I see the universe as being eternal, if I hadn't said that before, and that everything in it is a process, and our mathematics are processes, and numbers are actually functions, and the concept of infinity is a function. And when we talk about larger infinities, what you're really talking about is functions that have what's the right term? Acceleration. They expand faster. The function expands faster when using monotonic input to it. And you have to be monotonic, because if you start trying to go down to real numbers, you can endlessly generate them down. Well, there's no monotonic nature to that. The universe is integer at its very fundamental level. Solely positive integers are the best way to model the universe. And any of these relationships that look like irrational numbers are artifacts of our mathematical technology, not artifacts of the universe itself, such as pi, because there is no such thing as a circle. You can't make a circle out of discrete objects. You have an anagon, right? You can get up the end, it's monotonically and get a greater and greater approximation of pi out of that. But that's a function again. So pi is a function. And for engineering, the level at which you want to take pi to for the accuracy that you need, go for it. It's very, 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 very useful. But it isn't necessarily a true artifact of the reality of the universe. It's something that we use to conveniently talk about and or manipulate parts of the universe at a human scale. Or even at, is our microchips, UV lithography, nanometer, picometer scales, is that human scale? It's on the edge of human scale. Because we're able to manipulate it, and manipulate it fairly well. So we can build technology that allows us to build technology. Tool makers. There's a point at which, though, I don't know if it starts to escape us if we can, because we have to go derivative on derivative or integral on top of integral, so it gets out of our range of mental processing capability. But going back to evidence for chirality of the entire universe. I should look this up because I heard this years ago, but there's a tendency for certain galactic phenomena where there are, I'm not sure what they are, quasars or quasi-stellar objects, they're too big. It's basically that there are these spinning objects that tend to, across a galaxy, tend to be aligned in a direction where they're emitting energy from the poles, and within the galaxy itself they're all aligned. Well, that's part of the chirality of the universe being represented there in the dodic level of dimensionality. And when we see galactic webs, galactic filaments, galactic clusters, intrinsic in that is the influence, or it either creates or reinforces, well, it's like a particle. It's just like any particle, where the action itself reinforces the structure and the structure reinforces the action. As long as you have energy, let the two work together to meet reality. So the filaments, the galactic filaments, this on a black curve, the galactic filaments are in a way like leaves on a flowing river. They get the eddies in the motion of dodic space. The chirality, which produces the chirality, is demonstrated through the way in which the filaments are structured, or formed, or pushed together, or flowed. And maybe chirality isn't 100% universal even. Going back to the idea of oscillation, perhaps like a river, there can be places where there are eddies running counterclockwise and others that are running clockwise, and they will tend to persist. Now, that would be something that we should be able to try to observe or notice, is are there places where there would be a chirality flip occurring don't think that the representation, the motion within cubic space, human dimensionality, would necessarily indicate the chirality at the dodic level. So you could have what appear to be eddies running in opposite directions, whereas if you looked at them from one side or the other, the top or the bottom, they would both be clockwise. But if you looked at them both from the top, one would look like it was clockwise and the other counterclockwise. So that's the trick about the difference between dodic space and cubic space. I don't know. That was an interesting concept, though. If there was an oscillation in the chirality of the dodic space. It depends how far away we are. If there is a chirality flip, we are what appears to be a relatively stable phase of that oscillation. And as such, being able to observe it or evidence of it probably pretty much blended out. I don't even know how to try and detect it. I'm going to have to think on that one if I like it or not. I do like it because it allows you to have equal chances for matter and antimatter. Calling it a chiral vibration oscillation, chiral oscillation of the entire universe. Makes for scary times though when the entire thing resets. I guess that it takes a long time for humans, for intelligent life such as ourselves, to evolve and emerge. Maybe it doesn't. I don't know. It's a whole other question. A whole other field of consideration, investigation. Oh, and going back to the black holes, the supermassive black holes in the center of galaxies, that at some point all of the matter from a volume of space gets swept up in the black holes, right? And what this has the effect of doing on the surrounding space is stretching it to the point where becomes a volume that is very empty, and the rate, because there's nothing pulling back on the black hole, space itself is so empty it doesn't have a gravitational force to restrict the black hole. What happens is the Hawking radiation accelerates, emitting the matter / energy from the black hole at a faster rate to all points of the universe. And some of it being the local space itself, because it's very thin, it's going to have a tendency, as any empty space, to want to take particles back. But the black hole itself is emitting black hole itself's gravity field within this stretched space tends to have a rubber band or a trampoline effect on the Hawking radiation. But at the point at which the black hole itself evaporates, all that space just relaxes, and now it becomes a good empty volume to receive Hawking radiation from other black holes in the universe. And there should be a tension once the black hole is gone, which isn't gravity. That should tend to want to pull another new thought. Because the black hole basically melts away, pops out of existence, it's pulled the space together. It was slowly, the gravity well that it had created when it was supermassive is no longer there. The space, though, has been stretched and pulled in as tight as it can around essentially nothing now. The singularity doesn't even have gravity. The space itself is pulled as taut as it can be, because otherwise the black hole wouldn't have evaporated as fast as at the rate that it had to totally consume itself. There's probably a threshold at which the black hole no longer has enough gravity to be a black hole, and it will go poof. It will pop back out. It will go below the threshold. What is it? Schwarzschild radius, mass. At which point it will go kaboom. But the volume of space that it will have cleaned will still be at the low energy, and it will tend to pull whatever was left of the black hole core into it. It should be an amazing amount of energy released very suddenly. And again, that may be a source of some microwave background radiation. These events over great lengths of time it has to go kaboom. But the volume of space that is sucked clean is going to be enormous. I mean, think galactic voids, spaces between the galactic filaments. So you'll get what look like these explosions in basically a bubble of nothing, a bubble of emptiness, not nothing. No, nothing, everything's something, everything is space. But that's a very transient effect that's going to have a very local influence in that massive void, whereas the rest will now have its tension released a little bit when the black hole core snaps loose. So I used to think, well, I guess an alternative would be if you can accelerate it fast enough, the whole thing can push through those white holes and just disappear. But I think it's more likely that it's going to, I don't know what would accelerate it. I think it's maybe if a couple of supermassive black holes collided all at the same time, that there would be a point at which there would essentially be a momentum vector that was inward, which in Zodic space means outward everywhere. So that the momentum carried all of the matter of the final black holes through Zodic space everywhere. And then the other option would be to have a slower evaporation till that area was completely emptied, and it would go below the threshold for a black hole, and it would pop, spew itself out, and start as the core of some new gravity well. But it would only be operating on enormous distances because now it would be so far away from everything. All right, that's enough for today. I'm home. Boomer.